Welcome to another episode of Live from the Wish House with me, Chris Spinner. If you're a regular, welcome back. And if it's your first time, I'm so happy you're joining us. My path profoundly changed when my son was diagnosed with autism. My marriage collapsed and I began to develop my own Chris philosophies to navigate and thrive. I'm here to connect with you, to share and learn, and together we can open our minds to creating the life you love to live. So please subscribe, like, share, and most importantly, comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, feelings, and stories. A whimsical topic today. Let's begin with time travel. We all wish we could do it. Are there certain portions of your life that you would like to relive? And I don't mean with regret. I mean to go back and simply be in it, to experience it again. Kind of like the movie Peggy Sue Got Married, which is one of my all-time favorite movies for so many reasons, starring Kathleen Turner, who was at her 25th high school reunion, and she faints and wakes up back in high school. But it's not a frivolous wakes up back in high school movie. There's so much depth to what happens to her in this journey. But the standout thing about her going back in time is that she is still herself. She is still in her 40s, and she realizes that she's transported back in time. She's present in this time travel, but everyone sees her the way she was as a young girl at that time. And I always say that's the kind of experience I want to time travel back with, to have all the sensibilities of who I am now so that I could experience the joy of having been in that period of my life. There's a scene in that movie where Kathleen Turner answers the phone and it's her grandmother. And she flips out because she's talking to her grandmother and she hears her voice and she's crying as she's speaking to her. And her mom is not understanding why she's having such an emotional moment because you see, she only sees her as the teenager she is experiencing. And so the mom basically chalks it up to her being a teenager. But I never see that scene, even in isolation. Like if I see it in a clip, I always cry. Like tears just come out of my eyes. I'm surprised I'm able to talk about it right now without crying, but that's because I'm using a technique so I don't cry on camera. But the thought of being able to hear the voices of people in real time that we've lost hits you in such a uniquely emotional way. You got to go watch that movie, but I don't want to digress. My point being, wouldn't it be great to have time travel, to pick sections of your life that you'd like to return to and experience just for a day or two? So if you ask me where I want to go, the very first place that always comes to mind is my very early teaching days, not even my childhood. And I had a pretty good childhood. My first teaching job was at a Catholic school, very progressive, not a very strict environment. So many people are always talking about their strict Catholic school environments and experiences, but this wasn't one of those. However, I'm wondering if you talk to the students, they might not beg to differ on some level, but I'm still in touch with a lot of those students. And we often talk about the insanely symbiotic nature of teacher and family and school and church. It was an incredible mesh at a time when communication was at an all-time high and people were in an experiential kind of space. Whenever we have a chance to reminisce, we always say, if you weren't there at that period of time, there's no way you could explain the joy of it. And that became the foundation for my long, prolific teaching career. Those first early 5 years taught me so much about being part of community, being part of family, relating to children, and understanding the differences in each dynamic of child and of their family. And everything that came to me at that point in my life fell in my lap. I wasn't seeking that job. That job was seeking me, as I always say. We were a very young faculty. The majority of us, 90% of us, were in our 20s. And in many ways, it was like a little bit of an extension of college in our social life. And the memories we made, the friendships we made exist today. And exactly as I'm recording this, I'm getting ready this evening to go out with one of my core besties from that time. we're going to have dinner tonight. So all of that remained in my life. And as I often say, I would love to go back there. I would love to go back to fall at St. Bart's in Yonkers. The school doesn't exist anymore, which is kind of sad. But there was something about the way the sun streamed in through those windows into the hallway and the crisp air and drinking coffee out of the mugs that all had our initials on them. They were gifts from our principal, who we treated as our mother. They were fun days. And I know, of course, everything is romanticized when you look back. But even with all of the angst of my early 20s and being in love with a guy that didn't love me back, and coupled with all the girls' gossip and the fun dinners and the freedom of the 80s and my early 20s, I would love to experience that again. The incredible feeling of becoming an adult and living in adult life, being in charge of my own destiny, which, as I've said 100 times, I had no idea what my destiny was, but I digress. Now that I talk to the kids from that period of time, they always tell me I made quite an impact. So for somebody that didn't know what their destiny was, didn't have any idea who they really were, I'll take that good compliment. Another portion of my life that I would like to relive for a few days is raising my son. The little days, the PBS kid days, the Clifford days, the Barney days, the days of not sending him to a school program because I wanted to take him out for the day. The wonderful summers at my mom's, the teaching summers for Anthony, the great friends he made, my 2 nieces, his other 3 neighborhood friends. We used to call them the backyard gang of Bennett Avenue. I often say Anthony's childhood was the childhood that I would have loved to have. Even though there were great portions of my childhood that were fun and carefree, I'm going to venture to say I would have loved Anthony's childhood better. And so it was also a second chance for me to recreate my own childhood in creating a childhood for Anthony. It was quirky, autistic, worrisome, but it was still an incredibly great time. And I'd like to visit those days once again. I often say the closest thing we have to time travel is music. Yes, we have pictures as well. A lot of us have home movies, as we used to call them back in the day. But I think music gives us the most incredible out-of-body experience. It triggers every sense of our remembering and imagination. Looking at a picture is a different vibe. Watching a movie has a different vibe. This is where you're driving in your car and you hear the first few strains of Brandy by Looking Glass, and you say out loud, oh my God, it's 1972, and I'm at the swimming pool flirting with TR, my summer crush. And I get lost in that introduction, and I'm telling you, my whole body and soul feels like it's there. I can feel the sun, I can smell the chlorine of the pool, and my heart starts to beat when I think about my crush walking down to the pool area. Music is such a powerful medium. It's an incredible way for us to time travel. You know, I perform now in a musical duo. My friend Steve plays the guitar and I sing. Very minimalistic. We have brought music back to its primary authentic level, melody and lyrics. We like to say we're the AM soundtrack of your life. And that's been the biggest feedback from our audience. While they're complimentary on Steve's guitar playing and my singing, they love our set list because it brings them back. And so coming to one of our gigs is time traveling for a couple of hours, and you leave really happy. Why is nostalgia so important to us? Why is it so satisfying to time travel back to those places, even if just in our minds? And why do we think that our back in the day is the best back in the day? Here's what I've learned. In the words of Joni Mitchell, don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? When we're experiencing a portion of our lives, are we really present in them? Do we really know enough to be present? Do we know enough to kind of stand in our present selves and look at the picture of what we're doing, who we are with, what we are wearing, and what we are saying, and what we are thinking? I don't think we learn to do that until we're older. I know I started becoming mindful of that when my son, Anthony, was a little boy. So that would have put me in my 40s. That's usually an age where we start realizing mortality on some level, whether we want to think about it or not. And then staying present feels necessary. And nostalgia reminds us of that days gone by when it seems like we didn't have a care in the world. We did, of course, but when we look back, we only see the joy. Being in a place where there's only joy feels so incredible, and feeling as if there was once a time in your life where there was only joy feels so incredible, and we hold on to it. We don't want to let it go. The danger is we can start to convince ourselves that those days were so much better than these days, but that's not true. In the words of Carly Simon, these are the good old days. But the older we get, we need nostalgia like a virtual scrapbook. It's satisfying to relive the long chapters of our lives. In many instances, we can gain great knowledge from where we were and why we were. And it can inform even the things that we do today. But I think going back kind of validates us. It makes us feel important, relevant. It reminds us that we had something for many years before the now. And now we have something to say, something to share, something of a permanence. Nostalgia in many ways gives us a sense of no mortality. Everyone is still alive in the world of reminiscence. For many of us, nostalgia comes when we're having a bit of a hard emotional time, stressful times, hard to navigate times. You can go back and still be someone's child and still not be responsible for everything in your life. You know, I'm going to visit my niece soon. Her son, my great nephew, is my godson, and he's turning 1. I'm going to spend an overnight with the family. We're going to have a little birthday party, and I bought all of the things, some clothes, some toys. I've written the proverbial great aunt godmother check. When I arrive at my niece's house, everyone's always happy to see me. It's a very warm environment. But I'm the only one left of my immediate family. My brother, my father, my mom is gone. And when I show up there, I sense my single status. And I don't mean in an intimate relationship kind of way. I mean that I'm the only one left kind of way. I'm the elder stateswoman now. I feel the weight of being part of our family legacy now. But it's a joy-filled weight, an unexpected moniker. But elder statesperson is a joy-filled weight. I watched my nieces grow up. I watched their interactions with my son, and now I'm watching the next generation begin. And it's happening with my cousin's kids. We're now in the everybody's getting married and everybody's having kids era. And now the nostalgia creeps in even more than ever. I love regaling the tales of our younger generation, loves hearing it. And there's something about going back in time. It connects everyone into our lives. And for those brief moments, it doesn't feel like everyone's gone. And for me, it doesn't feel like I'm in charge. It doesn't feel like I'm the only one left. It doesn't feel like I'm the elder stateswoman. But when I come back to reality, my practice of staying present does make me thrilled that I'm in this season. It makes me overjoyed that I'm here to experience this part. I go back and reminisce, and that's satisfying because for those brief moments, everything at present melts away. That dreamlike state occurs, feels like walking on air. There's a little touch of melancholy, happiness, and it does feel great. And it's important for us because it makes us feel grounded, validated, relevant. And it makes the people we're communicating with at this time see that groundedness in us, that relevancy in us. It makes us feel like we have an emotional foundation on which so much is built. And we need all that. It's a connector. But nostalgia is a tricky thing. But what a thing. My third question is, why do we feel that our good old days are always the best good old days? When you think about it, how can that possibly be? My mom was a great reminiscer. She loved to talk about the old days. To my mind, I think she lived there a little too much. But she was convinced that her days past were better than her days present. And I was always lecturing her about that because I thought her days present were fabulous. As I mentioned before, we lost her at age 95. She had a very full life and a lucky life when it came to health. She didn't start failing in ways that were detrimental until she hit her 90s. She had her mind all the way to the end. She was a spry, active, and big part of everyone's life in our family. Definitely the matriarch. She was cooking and doing and serving and creating in her 80s. And so I used to give her tons of admonitions about how she didn't realize how great her present was. She would always tell me, "You sound like a teacher." I guess it's hard to get out of the classroom. But she loved to spin the tales of days gone by. She loved her childhood. She loved talking about her tomboy days with her brothers. She loved talking about after the war when everybody came back home to live. We were blessed. Everybody came back home. That's World War II I'm talking about. Her mom had passed away when my mom was pretty young, so she took over the role of mom to her 5 brothers. And even though it was arduous, she recalled those days with a fondness unmatched. She loved to talk about the days when she was PTA president, and it was the 1960s, and she preferred that spillover from the lockstep 50s to what else was happening and growing and moving in the later 60s. My mother was not a woman's movement, hippie, bohemian kind of thinker. She was a Lawrence Welk girl, and she wasn't happy with fast-paced moving times where I, like my father, loved the adventure of an open mind and a new day. But the one thing she would always say is that her times were the best times. Nothing like she was in now, she would say. She considered the simplicity of those days unmatched. The vibe of her growing up years to her 30s and 40s and 50s and the young motherhood she experienced in the 60s, they kind of paled in comparison to the days that she thought were the best days. She liked the music of her day. She liked the fashion of her day. Later on, she liked the TV programming of her day and insisted that we were all missing out because we hadn't lived in those things in that era. But I used to say to her, what about the people of my age? We think our times were the best of days. How many times I'm reminiscing with my friends about the great TV shows, the Brady Bunch, the Partridge Family, the Monkees, Saturday morning cartoons, our childhood food staples, Kool-Aid and Razzles candy. And of course, my generation is adamant that our music was the best music. We love to reminisce about all of that. We love to reminisce about our childhood. And we often say that respect was at an all-time high, whatever that means. You see, there's exceptions to all of those rules. I don't believe our times were the best, although there are moments, I will tell you, the music of the 60s, 70s, and 80s is kind of unmatched. But I stick with myself, what's happening at present. And I've grown to become very fond of artists today and what's happening now. I don't believe our times were the best. I believe they were the best for me because they were my times. It was my childhood. It was my teenage years. It was my early 20s before all the limitations, before all the responsibilities set in. But I'm also all about the 90s and the 2000s and raising my son. I love those days as well. What I've learned is that every single era of our lives is great. And that gratefulness comes from understanding that we are in another chapter and this is great as well. Turns out, I think it's a personal preference. I think that all of that, those days were the best, kind of points to when a person was at their happiest. And for me, I've been incredibly happy during all of the times, during all of the chapters, during all of the changes. And I'm incredibly